The movie erases all of Kyle's flaws. It definitely turns him into a hero by whitewashing the things that audiences might feel uncomfortable with.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 war movies that left out the real horrific ending.
If you've ever watched the movie Braveheart, forget it. It's a great piece of entertainment, but not an accurate guide.
For this list, we'll be looking at movies spanning the entire breadth of cinema history that fictionalize actual conflicts. These films bend the truth to such a degree that some of the most terrible consequences of those wars are glossed over or left out entirely. Are there any other egregious omissions left off our list? Let us know in the comments below. Number 10. The U.S. ultimately abandoned the South Vietnamese. Operation Dumbo Drop. In 1995, Disney released a family dramedy about the Vietnam War, Operation Dumbo Drop.
This is some kind of joke, right?
It's a joke, all right.
The film centers on real-life missions in Vietnam, where the U.S. military brought elephants to Vietnamese villages to foster goodwill. It was important to these soldiers to show the Vietnamese that their aid would be rewarded with American support. That support lasted only so long as the U.S. needed their help. After the rapid U.S. pullout, the South Vietnamese were left to fend on their own. The CIA left a list of Vietnamese collaborators behind in the U.S. Embassy.
And I thought, well, is this what we fought for? Is this what the Americans came for?
It was discovered that 30,000 were hunted down and murdered. Between 200,000 and 300,000 Vietnamese were sent to re-education camps. Many were tortured. All suffered starvation, torture, disease, and forced labor. Number 9. Mel Gibson's character would have owned slaves. The Patriot. When The Patriot was initially released, historians and other filmmakers roasted the movie for how it whitewashed history.
I understood you to be Patriot.
If you mean by patriot, am I angry about taxation without representation? Well, yes, I am. Should the American colonies govern themselves independently? I believe they can, and they should.
As Spike Lee put it, for 3 hours, the Patriot dodged around, skirted about, or completely ignored slavery. Despite owning a South Carolina plantation, Mel Gibson's Benjamin Martin doesn't own slaves. His black workers are all free men.
By standing order of His Majesty King George, all slaves of the American colonies who fight for the crown will be granted their freedom with our victory.
Sir, we're not slaves. We work this land. Freedmen.
Martin is an amalgamation of several figures from the Revolutionary War. One of those men was Thomas Sumter. Unlike Martin, Thomas Sumter was not so benevolent towards black people. He pushed the state to adopt Sumter's Law in 1782. The state promised a healthy slave to any white man who enlisted. To encourage enlistment further, any recruiter would earn 1 slave for every 25 white men they could get to sign up.
We could build a whole new world. Just figured we'd get started right here with your home.
Sounds good.
Number 8. Civilians were slaughtered during the land invasion. Okinawa. World War II films released in the 1940s and 1950s tended to push America's moral and military superiority. 1952's Okinawa was no exception.
Without meaning any disrespect, sir, during the last 2 years we may have developed a few weak spots, but I know we're as good as any ship in the fleet. Can you say that for the morale of the men? Well, that'll pick up once we hit stateside, sir.
The film revolves around the officers and a ragtag gun crew on a U.S. destroyer fighting in the naval battle. They're all terrified of the incoming wave of kamikaze pilots.
Why don't those kamikazes come and get it over with?
You don't have to beg for them, they'll come.
I don't mind the fighting. I just hate wait.
Okinawa moralizes over the use of kamikazes while completely ignoring the bloody land invasion. In the years after the war, report after report came out detailing Japanese and American atrocities. Both sides engaged in the wholesale slaughter of native Okinawans.
Okinawans are an isolated people. Mainland Japanese consider them inferior, little more than rustic peasants. but they have stories to tell.
Women were terribly mistreated and children were often taken or killed. Before the war, 300,000 people lived in Okinawa. By the end of the war, some estimate that half were killed. Number 7. Vietnam was not cowboys and Indians, the Green Berets. Oliver Stone came back from his tour in Vietnam and decided to write his own war movie. When Platoon was released, he was asked why.
Bob, I got a bad feeling on this one, all right? I got a bad feeling. I don't think I'm gonna make it out of here. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Everybody gotta die sometime, Red.
Stone said he wanted to write a realistic film to counter the Green Berets. The year 1968 was a turning point in the war. Public opinion was dropping, and the Tet Offensive turned the tide against the U.S.
And it kind of sets a man to thinking.
That it does. I also think we better get moving.
In the middle of that mess, John Wayne decided that America needed a jingoistic pro-war movie. Wayne built an entire career out of white hats versus black hats and cowboys versus Indians. As a vehement anti-communist, that's how he saw the conflict in Vietnam.
What will happen to me now?
You let me worry about that, Green Beret. You're what this is all about.
But, as Stone showed in Platoon, the jungles of Vietnam contain more shades of gray. Number 6. Ignoring what happened at Cholula, Captain from Castile. History is written by the victors. For centuries, the conquest of Mexico was seen from the perspective of the invading Spanish. In that tradition, Captain from Castile follows the adventures of a fictional conquistador under Cortez.
I'm delighted to have you join us in this venture. If you've the spirit and merit of your father, you'll prove worthy of promotion and a command. Thank you, Captain. A gentleman, a good omen.
The machinations and political infighting between Spanish leaders are on full display. What is not, however, are the blood-soaked results of those adventures. At its climax, Captain from Castile has the conquistadors march on Cholula on their way to conquering Tenochtitlan.
Sir, this is not an attack, it's a peaceful mission.
How do you know, De Vargas? Maybe it's a trick.
No, it's another ambassador.
Why waste words on these unpredictable savages?
The film doesn't go into much detail as to the events of Cholula, likely due to their unsavory nature. After gathering the city's leader, Cortez accused them all of treachery.
Tell the royal prince to watch closely and see which is the more powerful, his gods or my cannon. Ready! Fire!
He and his Tlaxcalan allies then annihilated most of the city. Thousands of unarmed civilians were murdered. Number 5. Not a Reluctant Killer, American Sniper. American Sniper is based on the life of SEAL sniper Chris Kyle.
You ever think about what happens when there's a real person on the end of that gun?
I don't know. I just hope I can do my job when that day comes.
According to the Navy, he had 160 confirmed kills in Iraq. In the movie, Bradley Cooper played Kyle with nuance and pathos. It's a portrait of a man obsessed with protecting others, who desperately doesn't want to kill. He doesn't rejoice in death, despite his high kill count.
Tell me why you do it.
Come on.
I want to understand.
Babe, I do it for you. You know that I do it to protect you.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
I'm here. Your family is here. Your children have no father.
The real-life Kyle claimed to have no regret for any of his actions whatsoever. He seemed to have developed an obsession with killing to the point of taking credit for murders that never occurred. He claimed to have killed carjackers in Texas.
Chris Kyle, a Navy SEAL no longer in service, driving a private vehicle, who's just committed double murder and is now going to be waived of any responsibility because of his prior affiliation or because of his kill count, is absurd.
He also said that the government sent him to New Orleans after Katrina, where he murdered 30 people with their okay. Number 4. The brutal winter froze thousands. Battle of the Bulge. The 1965 war film Battle of the Bulge sits high on many lists of the worst war films ever made.
Perhaps you are going too far.
To carry off this great deception, even their reflexes must be American.
Eisenhower came out of retirement to blast the movie. It completely ignores the Allied intelligence failures and arrogance that cost thousands of lives. What's worse, half of the film doesn't appear to take place in December. The weather is often sunny, and the hills are lush and green.
It's headquarters, Colonel. General Kohler says we are behind schedule. He wants to know what's holding us up.
Tell the General the Americans are learning how to retreat.
In reality, the Battle of the Bulge took place in the dead of winter. Tanks had to be chiseled out of blocks of ice. There was zero visibility thanks to freezing rain and snow. Many of the wounded would freeze to death before they could be saved. Hundreds of men got frostbite and several thousand suffered from trench foot.
We were inadequately clothed. We didn't have rubber overshoes. We didn't have overcoats. We didn't have gloves. We didn't have scarves.
Number 3. William Wallace allegedly flayed an enemy commander. Braveheart. Mel Gibson's William Wallace paints the Scottish folk hero as a noble savage. He was well educated, spoke Latin and French, and was out for justice for his slain wife.
Sanguinarius homo indomitus est, et semper dicens mentatium.
Ego nunquam pronunciare mentatium. Sed ego sum homo indomitus. En français, si vous préférez.
In truth, very little is actually known about William Wallace's life outside of war. Braveheart took many liberties with history. The movie version of the Battle of Stirling Bridge doesn't even have the bridge. In actuality, the English foolishly bottlenecked themselves on a narrow bridge.
Fine speech. Now what do we do?
Just be yourselves.
Where are you going?
I'm going to pick a fight.
And were slaughtered. Neither does the film show the recorded fate of English General Hugh de Cressingham. According to multiple accounts, Wallace didn't just kill the man in battle, he had the English commander flayed and made a sword belt from his skin.
The English chronicles are full of stories of Wallace's savagery. He put monasteries to the torch and laughed as monks were drowned in front of him.
Number 2. Thousands of POWs and civilians died building the Burma Railway, the bridge on the River Kwai. Many British World War II veterans took umbrage with the Oscar-winning film The Bridge on the River Kwai. It portrays a British commander played by Alec Guinness, who takes pride in ordering his imprisoned men to build a bridge for the Japanese. In actuality, when forced to build the Burma Railway, British officers encouraged sabotage. In a BBC interview, a former prisoner said that an officer like the movie's Nicholson would have been killed. Conditions, too, were far worse than the movie depicts. Tens of thousands of laborers from Thailand, Burma, and Malaysia were conscripted to aid in construction.
The appalling conditions have made us dangerously thin. We have no beds, inadequate shelter, atrocious diet, and no sanitation.
By the end of the war, 13,000 POWs died from exhaustion, thirst, starvation, and disease. Between 80 and 100,000 civilians also died. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The KKK were terrorists, not heroes. The Birth of a Nation. The Birth of a Nation was the first blockbuster ever produced. It was also replete with lies from beginning to end. Covering both the end of the Civil War and the Reconstruction era, the movie doesn't just spin history, it inverts it. The film shows black militias roaming the hillside, murdering Southern families. The KKK, however, are just honest white folk defending their homes. Black politicians steal elections and corrupt the government thanks to Reconstruction. History reveals that the opposite was true. The KKK and similar groups attacked communities all over the American South, stamping out black voting whenever possible. In Opelousas, Louisiana, a sister organization to the KKK murdered 200 black people to stop their votes. corruption, and murder killed Reconstruction in its infancy.
Ku Klux Klan was born in 1865, 1866, and they used terrorism right away against black voters.